Time now for another vlog. And if you have a vlog suggestion that I've yet to do, be sure and check the vlog playlist first. Feel free and send your vlog ideas my way via the comment section, Twitter, Facebook, our Discord. All the links to the Go Burns Nation below in the description section. And if you have a topic that you'd like to keep anonymous, I can do that as well. Feel free and DM me via Twitter, Facebook, our Discord. And just let me know you'd like to keep it anonymous. Today is Monday, as always during the vlogs, but it's also Independence Week in America. That's right, America! Independence Day week. And I did a vlog about America last year. So we're going to be a little bit more specific with today's vlog. And it's, I guess, ties into the week, right? A lot of people think about America. What do you usually think about? I'm actually kind of interested. What comes to your mind when you think about America? Feel free to let me know in the comments section. Just what's off the top of your head. Like, do it now. Do it! Okay, but anyways, most people, I would say, probably think about freedom, liberty, specifically freedom of speech, or free speech. The right to be able to voice your opinion, whether it's popular or unpopular, without the fear of going to jail or being locked up, black-bagged, sent off to a gulag, disappeared, tortured, never to be seen again. I would say that's definitely a cornerstone of America. Freedom of speech, free speech. And that's something that has spread throughout the world in other countries. Unfortunately, there's a lot of nations in the world that don't have freedom of speech, or very limited free speech. And there are people out there that still get in trouble in their governments, in their countries, if they say something that goes against the government, goes against the status quo. A sad reality. I wish that wasn't the case, but unfortunately, it is what it is. So it's something I think is important to a free society, any free society, whether you're a democracy, a republic. One thing you need in order to truly be free is the right to peacefully assemble, to peacefully protest, to peacefully speak out, to peacefully practice whatever you wish to practice religious-wise, because technically the First Amendment covers several things. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. Those are like the three things in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights under the United States Constitution. So all three of those are important, but specifically freedom of speech. And that's not just for people that agree on everything. Like, you have the freedom of speech to agree with me. 100%. You do not have the freedom of speech to disagree. Actually, that's the point of freedom of speech. The right for you, yes, you, to disagree with me. Whether in public, or in a comment section, or during chat whenever I'm doing a live stream. I always have plenty of people disagree with me regarding my opinions. As long as they're civil about it and respectful, that's perfectly fine. I'm not always right. And everything I say, everything I rant about, all my opinions are based on, yes, my opinions, my thoughts. And it doesn't mean I'm all-knowing. I do know a lot. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that I know everything. So anyone that comes along that disagrees with something I said, and it turns out I was wrong, then I'm humble enough to admit when I'm wrong about something. And usually that does happen. Unlike others out there, which would shun somebody for saying something that goes against the status quo or the state. Unfortunately, that is a reality that a lot of people face in the world today, is the fact that there's some things that you cannot say because there's a fear that it'll come back upon you. And it's not just in certain countries, it's also in social media, the age of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Twitch, where anything you say can and will be used against you. Unfortunately, there are people out there that say things that most of us can agree are ridiculous, nonsense, offensive, hateful, and whatever comes back on them, in my opinion, they deserve it. Because freedom of speech is a double-edged sword. I believe that everybody has a right to freedom of speech. You have a right to your opinion. You have a right to voice your opinion, even if it's an opinion that the majority of people disagree with. Even if it's an opinion filled with hate, intolerance, bigotry. Unfortunately, you have that right. Because if we start stripping away people's rights to speak based on this or this, that creates a slippery slope. Now, let's talk about a few examples of people in, I guess, celebrity culture that have been destroyed, more or less, because of what they've tweeted about or posted. Prime example would be Roseanne Barr, comedian, host of the popular TV series Roseanne. It was, earlier this year, it was revived after several years of a hiatus, and it became an instant success again, earning millions of dollars in revenue for ABC. It was one of the highest rated shows on the network in 2018. It all came crashing down because of some things that Roseanne tweeted out. Now, Roseanne has had a history of saying things. Some things offensive, some things that most people would probably not say. So she had this track record. But at the same time, that's no excuse in my opinion. None whatsoever. Now, some people are going to say, well, she was tired. She's in her 60s. She was on prescription meds. She was drinking. Okay, so I'm not held responsible if I get behind the wheel of a vehicle drunk and I kill somebody or hurt somebody? Of course I'm held responsible. I made that choice, even though I was drunk, to still get behind the wheel and potentially harm somebody else or worse. That was on me. The same thing goes for what Roseanne said. And once again, she's a smart lady, at least I thought she was. You think that somebody that has made it to their 60s would be smart enough to realize that if they post something offensive on Twitter, even if they don't think it's offensive, maybe, just maybe, a lot of other people would consider it to be offensive. That's the consequence. That's something that she should have thought through before she went on her, Twitter tangent. And it came back on her. She lost her job. Roseanne got canceled. Now, I believe that the show's actually being reformatted. It's going to be rebooted and basically a spinoff. I think it's going to be called The Connors. It's going to have everybody else. Darlene, Dan, along with Jackie, and the rest of the cast, I believe. So the good news is the cast, the crew, didn't technically lose their jobs over what Roseanne did. Now, did she have the right to say the things she said? Yes, she did. But ABC had the right to fire her for what she did, for what she tweeted, because she was an employee of ABC. Doesn't matter if you're working in the mailroom or you're a sitcom star. When you're working for a company, there's certain rules you have to follow. Because these companies, whether you love them or not, they have rules. Just like countries have rules, just like YouTube channels have rules. And I know that people complain about how I delete comments sometimes. I delete chat sometimes, or my mods do, because some people come into chat and they break the rules. Or people in Discord break the rules, intentionally or unintentionally. We have rules in a society. It's no different when you're working for a company. It's no different when you're living in a country. It's no different whenever you're part of somebody's YouTube channel. Rules are the rules. And while I do my best to allow a degree of free speech on my channel, I also don't want hate speech. I also don't want any of that hate and ugliness that you see spewed out there on the internet, in social media. There's no place for that in the Go Burns Nation. There's no place for that on my YouTubes or Twitter, Facebook, Discord. There's no place for it. So I make the choice to censor those that do post that shit on my channels or on my social media. I have a right because at the end of the day, you could very well say I'm a sovereign over the Go Burns Nation. While at the same time, I do try to make everybody feel like they belong to this nation, to this community, from all walks of life. And I want it to feel welcoming for everybody. Not for the trolls, not for those that, spew hate and intolerance. They're not welcome. But the difference is, I'm not having them dragged away and blackbagged and sent off to a gulag and tortured and disappeared. They're simply kicked off the channel. They're blocked. They no longer can post that shit unless they create another fake account, which unfortunately does happen. So that's the big difference here when it comes to free speech. When it's a YouTuber like me or a country. So at the end of the day, yes, we have freedom of speech. At least we should have freedom of speech. And I think the world would be a better place if everybody in the world, all 7-8 billion people, could live in their country and voice their opinion, even if it's something that goes against the current government, even if it's something their friends and family disagree with, without that fear of them being threatened or harmed or dragged away in the middle of the night, never to be seen again by their family or loved ones. I really wish that one day we get to that point. Unfortunately, we're far from there. And maybe it's happening in some countries. In other countries, maybe it's going backwards. But we should always be willing to stand up for what we believe in and speak out against intolerance, against hate, against racism, against authoritarianism, against tyranny. Because if we don't speak out against these things, then that allows evil to fester and thrive. And that's what happens. Evil men are capable of getting away with doing horrible, atrocious things because others did not stand up when they had a chance to speak out. Unfortunately, there is always a risk when it comes to speaking out and voicing your opinion. And that's a big reason why you didn't see people speaking out in Nazi Germany when the Nazi Party was taken over in the late 20s and early 30s, and all the other parties were being made illegal, and finally the Communist Party. So it was basically a battle of two evil parties. The Nazis won that one. The same thing happened over in the Soviet Union during the Stalin purges. Anyone that was suspected of conspiring against Stalin, whether they were or weren't, were rounded up by the NKVD, dragged off, executed, or sent off to a gulag. Most likely never to return. And a lot of that happened during Mao's reign over China and other countries too. I mean, we could go on and on about various countries in the world over the past century that have had a degree of issues when it comes to people's rights to speak out and what happens to those people that do decide to speak out. And a lot of Middle Eastern countries are like that. North Korea, despite the fact that things seem to be thawing between North Korea and South Korea and the rest of the West, including the U.S., still a dictatorship under Kim Jong-un. There's still things that happen to its citizens. Now, you would like to believe that because he's opening the door for peace between North and South Korea and for peace between North Korea and the West, that maybe that'll have a positive influence on, the status quo for the people of North Korea, where maybe they'll start to get more freedoms and liberties, and eventually they too will have the right to have free speech. But the only speech that they are allowed as of right now is the right to love and worship and praise the dear leader, or whatever Kim Jong-un is called, because they all had like different names. It all had something to do with a leader. I think his father, Kim Jong-il, was the dear leader, our supreme leader, or Führer, whatever. So, yeah, we have the right to freedom of speech in some countries, and we should never take that for granted. I don't take it for granted. I love that I have the ability to go on YouTube, our Twitter, our Facebook, our Discord, and voice my opinion about something. That's one of the reasons why I enjoy doing vlogs, is because I have opinions about things. I have thoughts, I have ideas, and hopefully advice as well that might help some of my subscribers out that take the time to listen to my vlogs. And it's awesome that people are able to listen to them. And even if it's only like, 10 people or 20 people or sometimes 40, 50 people that take the time to watch these vlogs, I'm grateful for each and every one of you. And I'm grateful to YouTube, despite YouTube and Google's flaws, for allowing me and others a place to voice our opinions and our thoughts and our ideas. Now, some people will be critical of YouTube for going after channels that spew hate and intolerance and bigotry. I'm not one of them. I'm definitely not one of them. I do realize that when we have the ideas of freedom of speech and free speech, it should apply to everybody. And that's wholeheartedly true in the U.S. If somebody wants to walk down the street, waving a swastika and start spewing all sorts of hate towards everybody else, then that's their right, as long as they're not, trying to actually physically harm somebody in the process. Now, what you could say is they are inciting violence through their speech. And there's definitely truth to that. But as long as they're being peaceful, unfortunately, neo-Nazis, skinheads, KKK members, Black Panthers, other hate groups have a right to peacefully assemble and, put out their propaganda. Just like Westboro Baptist Church. I don't know if they still do it, but they used to go out all the time waving their signs saying God hates this group, God hates that group, you're all going to hell. Even if most of us disagree with Westboro Baptist Church and the Nazis, the skinheads, and all these other racist groups, at the same time, freedom of speech is a very tricky thing. If you start taking it away from one group of people, even if the majority of us agree with it, it opens the door, the Pandora's box, which down the road, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually could cause more rights, more freedoms, more liberties to be slowly but surely eroded from us. So that's one reason why I'm not out there calling for them to be banned from speaking, because I understand the ramifications of it. I understand that, yes, if we take away their rights to spew their hatred, then eventually we may get to the point where we're not allowed to say anything that goes against the status quo, against the authority, against the government, whoever's in charge, whether it's Trump or someone else down the road. And that's the slippery slope we have to be mindful of whenever you live in a free society, whenever you have freedom of speech, free speech, whatever you want to call it, same thing. But at the same time, when it comes to freedom of speech, you and me, we have a right to protest peacefully against hate. We have a right. And this happens on numerous occasions, fortunately. I see it all the time, where you have this hate group out doing their little rally. Even though they're being peaceful, they're still talking about hate and all that nonsense. But you have people that stand up. Way more people standing up than them. And peacefully counter-protesting them. Talking about unity and love and bringing people together instead of dividing us. And that's the true beauty about freedom of speech. Yes, that group has a right to hate peacefully. I know, because unfortunately that can lead to worse. We've seen it in history. We've seen it with Hitler. What started off as speeches in beer halls unfortunately led to war and mass exterminations. But the difference here is you have, in a society of free speech, groups that can assemble against that group peacefully, hopefully, outnumber them 10 to 1 or 100 to 1, waving rainbow flags and peace signs and saying, no, love over hate. We're not going to be like that. Swastikas that are slashed out. So that is the beautiful part about freedom of speech. Some people want to focus on the ugly part, and unfortunately that's a reality. It's a tool. It's a double-edged sword. And that means that good people can use freedom of speech to inspire others through thoughts and ideas and concepts that are revolutionary. But unfortunately, there are those out there that can also use it to troll, to hate. But if we take away their right, where does it end? And the answer to that question is it ends with eventually none of us having the right to freedom of speech. And the only thing that we can speak about is how much we love and adore and admire and worship the dear leader. And just to clarify, that's not an anti-Trump message I was just posting right there. I was just being general. It doesn't matter if it was Trump or Hillary or somebody else entirely. I'm just saying eventually you could get to that point where you have somebody in charge that has decided for the betterment of everybody to take away everyone's freedom of speech. Because in some cases, when someone says something inappropriate, a lot of people unfortunately can be harmed. Like, for example, in a theater, when somebody yells fire whenever there's no fire, or when somebody yells bomb in an airport, or somebody makes threats against newspapers or schools or anyone else on social media. In a way, that is freedom of speech, but at the same time, they should be held responsible for what they said or what they tweeted or what they posted. So that's the thing about free speech. It's a funny thing. We all have the right to it. But at the same time, like I said earlier, it can and will be used against you. And it should be, especially when it comes to a lot of these mass shooters recently, when there were obvious warning signs, when they were talking about how they were going to do something horrible and go and kill a whole bunch of people or several people that they had a vendetta against at a newspaper in Maryland. There were warning signs. And those warning signs should always be taken seriously, especially in this day and age where we live in the war on terror, where we have, unfortunately, a growing amount of shootings taking place in the United States. So, yeah, whatever somebody says, you have to be mindful of what you say. Because even if you're joking, even if you're pranking, some people may not take it as a joke or a prank, especially if you're making such a ridiculous comment about that when real people have been harmed or killed in a shooting at a school or at YouTube or at the newspaper in Maryland or elsewhere. It's not a laughing matter. There are some things that are good to poke fun of and make jokes about, and I love a good joke. I have a sense of humor too, but at the same time, I'm also very understanding of the world we live in. And I know that if I say something on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube during a live stream or one of my videos that can be screwed as, a threat, as hatred, as intolerance, form of bigotry, then that's going to come back on me 100-fold. So everything that I say, I at least try to put some thought into it. Even whenever I'm just making a fun, silly, smart-ass comment in a live stream. Most of the time, I'm not even being serious anyways. But I never openly threaten anybody. I may say that I don't want to play with that person again, or, this is your last chance, or you're making me salty, or other things. But I always try to be, I guess you could say, civil when I'm playing with my subscribers, viewers, and fans. Even if they are doing something that's pissing me off. And I'll let them know they're pissing me off. And there's nothing wrong with letting somebody know you're mad at them. Being honest with them. But at the same time, nobody deserves to be threatened. Nobody deserves to have any sort of violence come upon them. The only time that violence should be acceptable is in self-defense. If somebody's threatening violence on you, if someone's going to attack you, then in my opinion, you have a right to fight back. Now, if you are being threatened by somebody, whether it's through social media, through school, at work, then you definitely don't need to be silent about it. You definitely need to go talk to somebody, whether it's a counselor, an HR person, your superiors, and let them know that somebody at work or at school is threatening you, or somebody in social media, a friend or an acquaintance, is making a threat against another group. Because we got to take that shit seriously. While there's some people that have legitimate grievances out there and they get angry, they feel like they've been shortchanged, they've been screwed over, and that's been me several times. I feel like sometimes I've had that happen to me. I have a right to speak out against it, to voice and air my grievances. But what I don't have a right to do is threaten anybody. What I don't have a right to do is carry out any sort of threats or violence. Free speech allows us to speak out, to voice our opinions, our thoughts, our ideas, even those that everyone else disagrees with, even those that go against the established government. And in most societies, you're not going to get in trouble for that. You're not going to be rounded up. You're not going to be taken away to some sort of black site and waterboarded and tortured and quote-unquote disappeared or sent to a gulag or murdered or executed. Unfortunately, in a lot of countries in the world today, that's still the case, sadly. But hopefully, just hopefully, as long as we continue to be responsible when it comes to free speech throughout the world, whether you're in the U.S. or other countries lucky enough to have it, you continue to use it proactively and not in a negative way. And you continue to use it as a place to exchange thoughts and ideas, and in order to make your country and your society better and more for equality's sake for everybody under the sun, And then maybe it'll spread because more people will say, you know what? I want free speech in my country. It's the spark. The spark, the light of liberty and freedom for all is your right and my right to free speech.